My name is Lynn Kinst. I'm the Executive Director of the Hemophilia Council, and I want to welcome you to our webinar today. This is Telling Without Yelling, a workshop on the art of telling your story. And this is going to be part 1. And next week, we're going to do part 2 of this series on how to tell your story. As we get started, I want to thank our webinar series sponsors, our platinum sponsor, Takeda, and our silver sponsors, BioMarin, HF Healthcare, and Sanofi Genzyme for making this webinar series possible. So with that, I want to get right to it and introduce Janel. Janel is our speaker for today. She previously worked at the Hemophilia Federation of America as their advocacy program manager, and some of you may remember Janel from that. She has also worked as a public health educator at Johns Hopkins and currently is the Quilt and Kit Ministry Manager at the Lutheran World Relief. According to HFSC's Executive Director, Michelle Kim, Janel is passionate for advocacy and one of the best speakers she has ever seen. Today, Janel will be guiding us through how to tell our stories in order to better advocate for ourselves. So welcome, Janel, and we look forward to learning more about telling our stories.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Hello and welcome to everyone. How is everyone today? Hope you all are well. So I have a question, and you can just raise your hand or unmute your mic or write in the chat. What do you think is the most important part about telling your story? What is the most important part about telling your story?
I think passion is important.
Passion, absolutely. Anything else?
I'd say relatability, so that maybe that same thing hasn't happened to the people who are listening, but there's something that they can empathize with, or something that they can connect with.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the key word that I wanted to speak to. The most important part about telling your story is that the person or the people to whom you are speaking listen to what you have to say. Because without them listening, you're just telling your story, but there isn't an exchange. So before you tell your story, it's very important to make sure that you take a temperature of what's happening around you. You have to think about things like, what do you want to happen when you tell your story, after you tell your story? Who is the audience? There are different people, that you're going to talk to. This may be a new neighbor when you want to explain how your child should interact with their child. This may be a new school principal, a new doctor, in an emergency room visit. This also may be an opportunity for you to talk to a legislator. Who is the audience? And is this the correct person to help me? If you need something, think about, is this the person who can help me? And if they can't help me, then how do I get my message across to get what it is that I want? What information can I give? Next slide. So with that, when you're thinking about how you're going to tell your story, when you're going to tell your story, is very important to establish a connection or a rapport. This may seem, unnecessary if you are at an industry lunch or dinner where you've been asked to speak. But I can guarantee you, when people are at a luncheon and they're waiting for the next agenda item to come, if you are the person speaking, if you don't engage the audience, you won't know if they're actually listening to what you're saying. So even in a room where everyone is understanding of bleeding disorders, it's very important to establish rapport. And the same is true no matter the person, whether it's in an elevator, it's at a job interview, it's in an emergency room. You want to make sure that you establish rapport. And one of the quickest ways that you can do that is to analyze the situation. Use key context clues. Is there anything, if it's a Zoom meeting, is there anything in the background that will allow you to relate to them, as the person said? If you're over the phone, it may be a little more difficult, but not impossible. if you hear noises in the background, a baby crying, or if you hear a television show, those are potential distractions that will prevent the person from listening and hearing exactly what it is that you have to say. But it's also an opportunity for you to acknowledge what's happening and establish a connection. The most important thing is that you engage the person so they know that you understand what it is that they're going through, because everyone likes to be heard, even if you're the one who's asking the questions. Next slide, or telling the story. Next slide, thank you. If you have something in common with the person, that is one of the quickest ways to establish rapport. If you see an I love New York poster, for example, you can talk about your experience with New York or your desire to visit. You may not want to mention if you never want to visit, because you want to make sure that it is a happy interaction. And then think about other things that may be around. Next slide. If you see something on the wall where this person has a place where they visited, you may want to mention that. And a sample intro, as I've listed here: hi, I'm Gabriella. How are you today? That can be an icebreaker, no matter the circumstance, no matter if you're talking to an audience at a luncheon, if you're talking with someone at a doctor's office, because what that does immediately is it lets the person know that you want to know something about them, and then there is an exchange. And depending on their response, that is how you decide to move forward. Because what I can assure you is, if you ask someone how they're doing, and if their response is anything other than, I'm great, I'm good, things are okay, then you need to listen to their response closely to see how you can interject the story that you want to tell, or decide if this is or is not the best time to tell it, because a distracted person cannot hear what you're saying. But it could also provide an opportunity for you to note that the two of you have something in common, and you may be able to help, and then you will have ingratiated yourself, and they will be more likely to listen to whatever it is that you have to say. Next slide. Hi, my name is Gabriella, and I noticed that you have a photo of a sailboat on your wall. I really enjoy sailing. That could be a way that you could introduce an opportunity for the two of you to share a common interest. Now, I don't recommend that you say you like sailing if you don't, because that could lead to a dishonest start to your relationship. But there's also the potential that mentioning the sailboat could bring up a memory that may be unpleasant if that sailboat represents something sad. So you have to be ready to pivot and redirect the conversation if, in fact, what you mentioned brings up a sad memory. But again, every interaction is an opportunity for you to establish rapport, and then you can move forward with how you want to proceed with telling your story. Always be honest. Next slide. So, most important, be brief. You are the best person to tell your story, but oftentimes we add additional details that we have accumulated over the length of our stories, but it's not necessarily needed to relay what it is that we're trying to say or get what we need to get. So you introduce yourself, you tell the audience why you chose them, and by audience, I mean any person. For example, hi, Lynn, I'm calling you today because I found out that you are the best executive director in the entire country, and I was hoping that you could let me know about various resources in California. I've told Lynn why I've chosen her. She feels complimented. I've acknowledged that she is the right person for me to speak with, and then I've asked what I needed, right? Share a few sentences about your experience, about why it's important in terms of what it is that you need. And then you want to ask for whatever it is that you are engaging in. I would have added more information to Lynn had I needed something more specific, but you start with the introduction, tell the person why you chose them, then you can ask whatever it is that you need, or share your story and then ask whatever it is that you need. Next slide. Be brief, continued. Ask yourself, is everything I'm about to say needed or necessary? If you want to tell someone that you have a bleeding disorder and that you have an active bleed in your elbow, you may not need to mention the fact that you were wearing a blue shirt and striped pants and you had on your favorite open-toed shoes that day and it was warm and sunny and the car wouldn't start, but you may want to get to the point about where they can help you, and then you provide that information. So just ask yourself, as I'm telling my story, is everything I'm about to say necessary to relay my point? And are there parts of the message that can be removed and achieved with the same result? Next slide. Be memorable, as someone also mentioned. There are lots of people who are telling stories. We are competing for a lot of time. When we watch television, I've noted that, and I encourage you all to do as well. When you're watching a television program, time how long it takes before there's a commercial break. Sadly, the attention span of most Americans is about 4 to 8 minutes long, if that, right? Because we are conditioned to have a commercial break. We are inundated with marketing materials. So that carries over into real life. So you want to make sure that you're brief, but you also want to make sure you're memorable. How many people, by a show of hands, have seen a commercial 10 times before they fully understood what the ask was? Right? And then you're thinking when you finally get it, oh, that's what they want. So imagine someone hearing your story one time. What is it that you can say to them that will make you memorable, because you're competing with everything else that has happened, not only in their day at work, but in their day at home, in their drive home. And if there's a message that you want them to carry with them for a longer duration of time, you're competing with multiple days of events. And then not to mention what they may consume via television, computer, or cell phone. So you want to be brief, but you also want to be memorable. I think most people assume that people understand their circumstance and they're not as descriptive as they should be. But one of the most memorable things can be a specific experience or something very descriptive, and that stands out, as opposed to, I hurt my leg when I hit it on the door, is different from, I hit my leg on the door and there was a bleed about the size of a grapefruit that bulged from my calf muscle. That I remember, but I would not necessarily remember, like I know they hit their leg on a door, I'm not sure. But if you give me something descriptive, that stays in my memory. And then as I'm, advocating for you for whatever it is that you need, whether it's your child being able to play with my child or your visit at the doctor's office, I'm going to remember you. So you always want to be memorable. So just recapping, be brief, be memorable, but first and foremost, establish the rapport and make sure that you have an engaged audience, because nothing about your story will matter if the person to whom you're speaking is not listening.
Exactly. Thank you, Janelle. So this was our kickoff, right? So we started off today with Janelle's tips and a little bit of example and practice. And then next week, we're going to get to go a little bit deeper and do a little bit more practice to be able to be fully prepared, not just for Legislative Day, which is coming up, because there's lots of opportunities where we need to be able to articulate our stories and advocate for ourselves and others, whether it's at school or at our workplace or because of an insurance issue. There's all kinds of situations that come up, right, where we need to be advocates for ourselves and for others. And so hopefully this helps prepare all of us to be able to do that more effectively. So thank you so much, Janelle. Does anyone have any quick questions on what we talked about today before we just go over a couple quick announcements? Scan through and see if there's any.
I just have a quick comment.
Yeah.
Last night, when we were practicing with the future leaders, they were amazing. I think the one thing that was missing, and Rigo and I worked together on this, they didn't necessarily establish what hemophilia or bleeding disorder is at first. But other than that, they were awesome.
As part of Janelle's point, right, about knowing your audience, right? Do they know what a bleeding disorder is when you're talking to them? Or do you just say you have hemophilia or von Willebrand's and keep talking and they're back trying to figure out what that is and they miss everything that you tell them, right? Because they're back still trying to think, what is hemophilia or what is von Willebrand's disease? And you haven't explained it to them. So that's a super important point. We are at time. So let me just quickly mention Future Leaders, as Elizabeth just mentioned, is ongoing right now. They're meeting on Tuesday nights. And then just want to remind everyone that Legislative Day is coming up. There are 3 dates there. I just want to assure you, we are not expecting you to take 3 days off of work. The meetings are on Wednesday, April 14th. The 12th is simply an orientation webinar that will happen at noon and 6 p.m. You only need to be on one of those 2 webinars. Your choice at which time works better for you. And then on Tuesday, you'll just have a brief meeting with your team to kind of orient yourself and practice a little bit before your meetings on Wednesday. And then the meetings on Wednesday, we have to go through and schedule those with your legislators. So unfortunately, we can't tell you for certain yet what times those will be, but we are scheduling them between like 9:30 and 10 o'clock and 3:30. So that's they'll be somewhere in that time range on your calendar. And then we just finished our policy summit on February 25th, and we have a second one that will come up on September 23rd. Wanted to mention that date. Community members are welcome to participate in our policy summit. So we encourage you to mark that date on your calendar, and more information will be coming on that at a later date. And just remember that our follow-up to today's webinar with the second part of how to tell your story will be next Wednesday at the same time. So that will be the 17th at noon. So we hope to see you back then. Thank you again to Janelle. Thank you to our sponsors of our webinar series. Thank you to Rigo for sharing his story, and for all the rest of you that jumped on and shared your stories on the fly. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we will see you next week. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.